What a spectacular race we just witnessed after last week's catastrophe of an ending in the Daytona 500. I mean, this race had everything you can ask for. Great side-by-side racing, 3 and 4 wide battles through the pack, a great photo finish, and just the right amount of carnage with enough cars still running at the end to get a great finish. I mean, this race overall was fantastic. Let's jump back and take a look at this race. Early on, I lost hope after the big crash that happened on lap 2. I thought, man, we're about to get another single-file snooze fest. I thought we lost so many cars, but actually, only one car retired to the garage for damage from this wreck. Christopher Bell eventually went to the garage, but he met minimum speed. Josh Williams was the only driver that went out of the race with damage and didn't return. This is just another super speedway racing deal, just like last week in the 500. There's really not one person to blame. The 38 and the 34 were playing games trying to let each other in line, and that's just what got people woed up. And then you got guys that are just running into the back of each other because you can't see 3-4 rows in front of you. And when you're racing such tight quarters, it's just being at the wrong place at the wrong time. It's unfortunate that it was lap 2, but again, I see people that are saying that Austin Dillon should be upset because Martin Truex Jr. spun him out, but somebody was running into the back of Martin Truex Jr. So you just have this stack-up effect, and guys are just bumping into each other, so it's just a racing deal. It is unfortunate that it happened on lap 2, but I will say the positive out of this is most of the cars that were in this wreck were still able to continue, and some of them actually got top 20 finishes out of it. Then we had a few more cautions before the end of the first stage. Chris Buescher spun out under commercial break by himself, didn't hit anybody, he was able to continue, and then Denny Hamlin tried to clear himself off Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch also came up the racetrack a little bit, and Denny Hamlin spun out once again unharmed, and he was also able to continue. So those were some other wrecks that were in stage 1. And then for the stage finish, we had Michael McDowell in a one-lap shootout trying to hold off the rest of the field. He would eventually do that and win the stage, and during the first stage we saw a decent amount of action, even with having that big crash that was on lap 2. And then in stage 2 we saw something that I've been waiting for to see happen since they implemented this stupid rule at this racetrack, and that is the pit road entry. We saw a green flag pit stop cycle at Atlanta with the new pit road speeds with the 90 miles an hour and then the 45 mile an hour, and we saw 2 cars crash. Michael McDowell locks up the brakes, gets into William Byron, both of them wreck coming onto pit road, they bounce off the wall, they come on the track for a brief moment, both of them end up being able to roll, but NASCAR doesn't throw a caution. They felt that they didn't want to ruin other people's races. If they had thrown the caution, 50% of the field would have been a lap down. So I applaud NASCAR for not doing that, but again, where do we draw the line with safety and entertainment? Because there were 2 cars that were crashing on the bottom of the racetrack. Then on the last lap of stage 2, we probably saw the cleanest Joey Logano block in the history of NASCAR. I mean, really, Chris Buescher's already hitting the wall, and Joey Logano still comes up and puts him in the wall. This is probably one of the cleanest things I've ever seen Joey Logano do. Now, Austin Cindric would go on and win the stage as it would end under caution, and Denny Hamlin would also get collected in it, but Denny Hamlin was still able to continue. This would ultimately take Joey Logano out. Todd Gilliland looked strong in this race, and I'm really excited to see how they do on 1.5 mile and short tracks as the year progresses, not just super speedway tracks. Ross Chastain got into the back of Chase Elliott, and as much as Chase Elliott fans believe that Ross Chastain did this on purpose, this is just another racing deal. You're pushing hard, you're going into the corner, and he just ran into him. I mean, what is he supposed to do? Slam on the brakes in an instant? Chase Elliott fans, you have to understand that not everything is always not your driver's fault. I mean, really, it's just a racing deal. It's okay to admit that. This was probably the most badass moment of the race, and that was when we went 4 wide for the lead at Atlanta, a track that isn't even wide enough for 3 cars sometimes. It was incredible to see this racing, and then as Martin Truex Jr. continued to fall back through the field, I had to hold my breath. I thought that there was going to be a massive crash here, but all the drivers made it through. I'll say this is some impressive racing, and the entire pack did a great job of avoiding another big crash. This is what super speedway racing should be. 3 and 4 wide racing where you're up on the wheel and you're a little bit out of control, but you're still able to not have a big incident. These are the best drivers in the world, and we saw that at this moment in the race. We did see some more wrecks as the laps dwindled down towards the end of the race, and ironically the next crash took out the cars 5, 6, and 7 all in the same crash. I don't know, there's part of me that chuckles at this just because, like, what are the chances that this happens? But Brad Keselowski got loose and collected Kyle Larson and Corey LaJoie, and it's a shame because Brad Keselowski is still looking for that first win in the number 6. And then we saw Chase Briscoe do something similar in the same exact spot on the track. He got a little loose from air, spun out, collected Denny Hamlin, and this just started to set off the chain that eventually got us to the great finish that we had at the end. Then with 15 laps to go, Daniel Suarez and Ryan Blaney would flip-flop the lead. This would ultimately lead to a record being broken, and that is the most lead changes at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Now I will say we had another record broken, and it's not an impressive one, and that is the most cars crashed in a race at Atlanta, but still, about 20 plus cars were still able to run at the finish, so I would say that's pretty successful for a super speedway race that had as many cautions as it did here. Now we did have another wreck towards the end of the race, and that was with Josh Berry and also Carson Hocevar. They crashed. It was a weird looking crash. Carson Hocevar got up in the air. Very strange crash, but this then set us up for the final restart and the finish of this great race. On the final restart, Daniel Suarez would lead Ryan Blaney to the green flag. Now I thought here that we were maybe going to see one more crash just because of how this race had trended, and I thought somebody that was maybe in the next 3 or 4 rows back was going to sneak through and take the win. With the way that Ryan Blaney and Suarez were racing in the previous laps and even here throwing blocks and racing aggressively, I thought for sure we were going to see another crash. Ryan Blaney would retake the lead from Daniel Suarez with help from Martin Truex Jr., but Kyle Busch would come back and help Daniel Suarez on the bottom. We had Bubba Wallace back up into play after being in that lap 2 accident. He had a great rebound. We had guys that were in the top 10 like Kaz Grala, Chris Buescher had come back, Michael McDowell, guys that had spun out earlier, and they were back in an opportunity to maybe win this race if something had happened. It was remarkable having that big crash and having these guys at the end. Now at the last lap, we have Ryan Blaney. He gets pushed down to the lead, and I thought right here that he was going to win this race. They were side by side behind him. I didn't see any momentum coming. I really thought Ryan Blaney had it, but then out of nowhere, Kyle Busch gets a big push from Bubba Wallace, gets to his outside, side drafts him. Then Daniel Suarez gets to the outside of Kyle Busch, and we're just going to take it all the way down to the wire. 3 wide, 3 by 3, 2 rows deep, and Daniel Suarez comes out of nowhere to win the race for his second career win in the NASCAR Cup Series, and he maybe saves his career at Trackhouse Racing. I mean, this was a storybook ending for this race. It was perfect. We saw the second closest margin of victory right behind Ricky Craven and Kurt Busch. Now this race will be remembered forever. I believe that it had great racing throughout the whole race, even considering that big crash. I had written it off on lap 2. But it rebounded, and I'll tell you what, Atlanta has become one of my favorite tracks, and I believe that the playoff race will be even crazier. Let me know what you guys thought of this race. I want to hear your guys' opinions. I've seen people that say that they hate it, and I see people say that they love it. Let's just look at the racing product. Let's not say, oh, we miss old Atlanta, or we hate this, the car's terrible. No, just let me know what you think about the racing itself, what you saw today. Picture if it was like Daytona or Talladega. If this was that, how would you rate this race? But let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.